So, okay, so this is going to be recorded because like we tend to use it for our PR. So, okay, so I'll start with, okay, who wants to go first? I think we should go with the first questions. The first question, I think I'll start with Dan first. So what are the current trends? What are the current trends in the African touring circuits? And how are they changing? How are they evolving? Like, is there like anything new in the African touring circuit based on your own experience?
Just repeat the question, please, Adebayo.
Okay, the question is, what are the current trends in the African touring circuit and how are they evolving? How is the African touring circuit evolving? What have you noticed in your experience in the African touring circuit? Maybe touring as a musician in Africa or as a music manager or a professional in Africa?
Okay, let me answer that then. I'll answer it from the perspective of South Africa. And, I think we've got to look at this as a post-COVID narrative and, born to the fact that we still aren't really back to where the tourism element in particular is still, people who are dealing with this kind of market. So I think if I can just, qualify it by saying there's not enough, it should be a hell of a lot more.
Oh, okay.
And that's one of the reasons why ACA is important from the perspective that it should bring together a lot more people than it does within the touring circuits.
Oh,
and
okay.
I'll let Josh add on to that.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Dan. Josh, you want to go as well? That first question. So, like, what is the state of the African touring circuit? I think I should just put that so that it makes a little more sense. So, what's the state of touring circuit and how is it evolving? Is there like a change? Is there anything going on?
Well, like I say, I think Dan's answered the main point of that question to say that we're still in a period of transition or reconfiguration after COVID, and but at the same time, it's now become a much bigger and lucrative market in that period. If I can add that in as well, since we were all under lockdown and in COVID, because in the past 2-3 years, we've seen the explosion of African music, particularly Afro beats from Nigeria and Amapiano from South Africa onto the global stage. And in doing so, it's created a lot of international attention, excuse me, and focus on the continent. Whereas, maybe 5 years ago, the emphasis or the international music industry's attention was on K-pop in Korea and the kind of Latin explosion that happened around that time of big artists out of the Latin American musical community on the international stage. Now there's a lot more interest and a lot more curiosity about music from Africa. So I think it will bode well for the future of music on the continent, and hopefully we'll also build touring circuits with more African artists wishing to play in other African countries and building their network and fan base in neighboring countries and possibly countries on other parts of the continent from where they are, as well as creating an interest and an opportunity for bigger international artists to come and perform in Africa.
Well, thank you very much for that. I think that's a very good explanation. So I appreciate that. Okay, so let's go to the next question. I think I'll start from you this time around, Josh. Okay, so how does now? Okay, so I'm localizing this a bit now. So now, since both of you are based in South Africa or in Southern Africa, so to say, so is there, okay, but I know you've actually performed, like you've been around the continent a bit. So, so is there, what do you think, is there a difference between the touring circuit in Southern Africa? And I'm not just talking about the Republic of South Africa, I'm talking about Zimbabwe, Zambia, countries in that region, as compared to maybe other regions in Africa, say West Africa, where, as you said, Afrobeat comes from, and North Africa with, its various festivals and all that. So, do you think there is something in Southern Africa around that sense? Do you think there's a difference, or do you think there is something missing, or so what are your thoughts on that? Like, is there a difference between the tour circuit in South Africa as compared to other parts of the continent? So Josh, you would like to take that first?
I'll try and answer that. I mean, I might also just preface it by saying, I don't think I know enough about, say, an East African touring circuit. I do believe that there is a regional circuit in West Africa, particularly where there is a better connectivity, and I mean in terms of transport and travel between countries, and it's easier, and of course a common currency as well, which would make it a little bit easier for artists in West Africa to be able to play in 3 or 4 different countries over the space of a week or consecutive weekends. In Southern Africa specifically, there because of the vastness, the geographical distance to travel, it's not the easiest sort of travel. The travel, how can I put it? The links between the countries, unless you're flying, you can't really do it the same way you would be able to do it in Europe, where a lot of artists are able to jump in a van and literally go on tour, and crossing borders is quite easy, and distances are shorter, so you could do a short regional tour of Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, for example, where those countries are all quite close, and also the travel links are a little bit more sophisticated, I would say, in terms of you could use trains and buses. I mean, in Southern Africa, for an artist to travel from Zimbabwe or Angola or Namibia down to South Africa by rail or by car is, it's not. I mean, it's possible, but it's quite time consuming and quite expensive as well. So we're, I think, still in the infancy here of building a sustainable touring circuit where an artist from, for example, Botswana or Mozambique could build a little tour that brings him to or her or a band, depending on the makeup of the artist, that could bring them to 3 or 4 countries in the space of a week or 10 days. So yeah, I think the challenges are the geographical distances that need to be covered, and the expense of moving from one country to another. If you can't afford the plane ride, it's not that feasible. It's not that affordable. I don't know, Dan, if you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah, Josh, I think it's extremely valid. The other point as well is that in South Africa, the connectivity and the commonalities are mostly driven by festivals that have decent budgets. So it's very difficult to, unless you're on the same weekend or at least on a 10-day radius, it's very difficult to create that circuit, because unless you have corporate sponsors, you have to abide by the dates of the festivals. If you have corporate sponsors, which is very rare now, then you can put gigs together. But as Josh says, the geographical distances are vast. and the cost of accommodation and travel are steep, so coming back to the general sort of narrative of the entire conversation of ACA, it's about us finding a way, and by us I'm saying ACA, finding a way to connect all these various role players and stakeholders within the South African economy. So as Josh says, there's a lot of work to be done. We're a long way away from where we are.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, thank you very much, Dan. That's a very illuminating question, and it's actually lead me, because something I found interesting is the issue about plane rights and bus rights and economic issues generally, and that will lead me to the next question I'm going to be asking you guys. So we are talking about economic issues, the bus plane rights. So we're talking about government policies now. So what do you think African governments? Now, I'm not just going to be talking about governments in South African region. I'm going to be talking about African governments in general, because I think it's that's like something that cuts across every African country, regardless of whether it's South Africa or Nigeria or Morocco or Kenya. So what roles do government policies and infrastructure play in supporting and hindering music tours in Africa? Like how can governments, African governments, be doing better, as individual governments and as perhaps like the AU or some African body and something like that. So you can use examples, perhaps South Africans, perhaps the other African countries. So, but the question really is, how can African governments be supporting? How can they make this easier? You can use the South African perspective if you wish. So,
there's two things at hand here. Number one is our government policy that supports culture has been extremely haphazard. We haven't had visionary ministers of arts and culture probably been a democracy for 30 years. We've probably been on the back foot for 25 years of those. So besides, and it's a common statement, but besides the fact that we're stagnant, we've actually moved backwards. So you find that government funding, decent government funding, is for select festivals, often granted from the perspective of patronage, and there's still a lot of corruption involved, whereby a lot of the festivals and events that really make a big difference, and with this job creation within the cultural ecosystem is paramount, there's very little to be positive about at this point in time. However, in saying that, we've got a brand new minister of arts and culture who has started off pretty well. He's been saying the right things. So let's see where that goes. But point two is there should be somehow, and I'm not sure whether the African Union, the AU, has enough clout to determine how the cultural corridors, the creative corridors of Africa should be promulgated. But it would be fantastic if there was a conference with all the ministers of culture of the African states put together, and then a white paper or something tangible devised from that. But as far as I know, there's never been anything like that. So maybe this is something that I'm not sure where it comes from the AU or wherever, but this would be certainly something that would be worth following up.
Okay, thank you. Josh, you wish to say something?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's as Dan said, it hasn't been a priority, I think, for government, whether it's regionally or across the continent, to sort of foster and build cultural links and links through the arts. And I really think that is the one thing that unifies most people, and is such a strong, there's a strong opportunity. Again, I refer back to what I said earlier on in the conversation, that there's an industry that's just boomed in the last couple of years as an export industry. There's a massive commodity that's coming out of Africa, that with South Africa and Nigeria a little bit at the forefront of it because of the subgenres that have just blown up, mainly in the kind of youth pop electronic music space. And a lot of the big international artists and producers and record labels are looking to Africa for the next big talent or the next big thing. And obviously, there's over 50 countries in Africa where there's scenes that are still waiting to be developed and raw talent to be developed and nurtured. So how respective governments do that within the respective countries. I mean, there isn't, as Dan said, a sort of a continental-wide policy or a paper, but I really believe that governments, cultural departments of government should actually be doing a lot more to foster and encourage cross-border collaborations, especially on a regional basis, or to put funds towards or grants towards encouraging artists to tour. So that's travel allowances that maybe get issued if you're able to put together a decent enough proposal that won't get lost in the system. If you're a young up-and-coming artist, you don't need to be an established artist, but if you're a young up-and-coming artist and you want, say from, let's use it in a regional sense, from Eswatini, which is on, a country very, very close to South Africa, to be able to travel to South Africa and play some shows and play some shows in Lesotho, perhaps, or Mozambique. There's opportunities there for cultural ministers to work together and encourage artists to collaborate and tour in each other's countries and work on music together. I think it's the best way to foster links. And again, at ACA, it's something that we've started discussing. There's a long road ahead, but I think with a little bit of government help and a little bit of hard work and good ideas, and there's a convergence where we can start to build something tangible.
Okay, so so I think that's a very, very good point on the ACA. I think we'll talk more on that. But I just want to know the potential benefits. We've been talking about how governments need to do this, people need to do this. What are the benefits? Are there anything that, are there any benefits to having such a strong touring circuit? Because when we talk about the benefits, that's when we know, okay, I think we should do this. And if we're talking to governments, if we're presenting a white paper or anything, of course, there will be an highlight of the benefits of a strong touring circuit. So what do you guys think the benefits will be at governmental level? You can take it from any perspective, to the artists, to the professional managing them, to the government. So what do you think the benefits of a strong touring circuit will be?
Okay, Shala. Well, first of all, I just want to go back to the previous sentence, or question rather. And if you look at, I represent WOMAD in Sub-Saharan Africa, and we feed into the European Festival Forum Association of Festivals, which has something in the region of 2,700 festivals in Eastern and Western Europe. And if you look at the number of African artists, it's minimal. The number of South African artists is even worse, and that's something that I constantly get a finger pointed to. And one of the reasons is because of identity. And another reason is that African artists are probably not represented to the extent of other artists. And I'm not talking about the Bobo Miles and the Salif Keita and the Angelique Kidjos. It's a second, third, and emerging generation of African artists, So there's that angle to look at. So in a nutshell, I think we need more representation, driving into those festivals. And secondly, on the tourism circuit, culture and tourism go very closely together, you know. And if you look at the benefits of festivals like, I'll take an example, Glastonbury. The amount of tourists from within and outside of Europe that go to Glastonbury is mind-boggling. And that's cultural tourism. Cultural tourism spreads throughout the broad extent of the creative ecosystem, you know, and I find it mind-boggling that our Department of Tourism and our Department of Culture have hardly communicate. And I know that for a fact, you know, and to me, the two go extremely closely together. And that's an angle that hopefully the new minister will be driving. And particularly from the point that from WOMAD, we're lucky in that we have WOMAD festivals in a number of countries around the world. And it's a small community. So we get people from, I'll give you an example, Hungary, Budapest. You know, we had a group of, I think they've got 26 people from Budapest last year. Incredible, you know. And when you imagine what the tourism spin-off on that is, especially in Cape Town, it's amazing. And we have people from Australia, New Zealand, UK, even Chile, you know, but it's not marketed enough, you know, and it's very difficult for us to do it in the small continuation of forms that Josh and I are involved with. It's got to come from a much more powerful element, and that's the governmental structures of tourism and culture. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan. Josh, you want to jump on that as well?
I'm good. I think we've covered. I think we've covered that point. I think you know, if we want to just, in terms of the more specific point of what we are trying to do within ACA, and the original idea behind ACA that brought us together initially was one of our main, well, in fact, the founding partners and founding members of ACA is an American woman, Catherine McVicker, who represents some serious talent in the States in terms of within the jazz and kind of an African music space, and she endeavored to connect a lot of us in Africa who didn't know each other but had been in touch with her to say, you know, we're interested in one of your artists. Can they come and do a show in Zambia, for example, or in Kenya? And then that led to the idea is, if you're coming all that way from New York or Los Angeles or wherever it might be in the world, to travel to do a show in one specific African country, surely there's a circuit that can be developed so that it makes the trip worthwhile in terms of you know, revenue that you can generate and new audiences that you can build in 3 or 4 different countries. So we're striving at the moment to build the network, to bring in more members from countries that still are not represented, and you know, between the exchange of ideas and various meetings and viewpoints that are expressed, the bigger picture is to create these regional networks that would benefit, whether it's a developing artist from the States or from anywhere in the world, from South America. We do work closely with a Latin American version of ACA. There's a Latin American equivalent, and they're also in the process of trying to develop something that exists in South America and Central America specifically, where we're quite underdeveloped in terms of infrastructure and travel routes, but in a lot of that stuff is not really in our control. But as Dan says, maybe there's that can be taken to the AU to say, you know, we want to encourage cultural ties and musical ties across the continent. And if something is formalized and it's almost passed down and becomes institutionalized, it'll just definitely benefit the arts, because, as I've said, it's the one unifying factor that we have across the continent and across the world.
Yeah. So okay, thank you very much for that, Josh. I was going to ask a question about what what ACA is doing to address the issues around the strong touring community, and but I think you actually just preempted me and then answered that, which is actually very beautiful. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. So I'll just get your final thoughts on this subject we've been talking about. We've been talking about for the last 30 or so minutes. Final thoughts of both of you. So what do you think, based on your experience, so what do you think the future of a touring circuit is for Africa? So like, do you think, it's going to be hard? Or do you think, yeah, we can do it? Or because I think you mentioned the fact that, you know, governments at the moment are not, you know, they've not really been doing, as in they've not been really forthcoming. So I just want to know, so what's the, what are your thoughts, final thoughts on those two issues? Like on the touring circuit in Africa, I think I should put it that way. So what are your final thoughts? What's the future? Is the future looking bright? Is it looking bleak? So just that. Do you get the question? Oh, okay. So Dan, you can go.
Okay. Well, it's a blank canvas at this point in time, you know, and always when there's a blank canvas, somebody needs to step in and paint the picture. Whether it's ACA's role or whether ACA wants to do this and take on the mantle of connectivity throughout the African tourism or tourist circuit, I'm not sure, you know, but what we can do, where Josh and I can be involved with, is in the South African tourist circuit. You know, so there's got to be a mandate from that. You know, I'm loath of leaving these kind of things to the politicians, you know, because for various reasons, which you don't need to get into, but something whereby a creditable organization like ACA could get the required funding to start off a pilot project where we could bring the various elements together. If you look at it, you know, festival directors and organizers and coordinators are always pretty insular people, you know. There's never been a great sense of camaraderie or trying to help each other out, you know, and that's good and bad, but it's something that I don't think we can change at this particular point in time. So coming back to that, and I'll bring it back to the ACA narrative, there needs to be a discussion as to how we can lobby to try and drive the tourism sector, the tourist sector in South Africa and beyond it. I mean, it's such a broad subject, but I think I'll leave it at that, you know, to make a point.
Okay, so thanks very much, Dan. Josh, you want to just share final thoughts on that, on the future of the touring circuit in Africa?
Sure, absolutely, and you know, again, referring to what Dan referred to as a blank canvas, it's very much in its infancy. I think we're realizing that it's a big challenge, but it's a worthwhile challenge because it is I believe Africa is really the future of the global music scene and entertainment scene, and that includes not just music, it includes film, it includes dance, it includes theater, and anything that's content driven. It is a blank canvas. We're really at the start. There's a lot of new ideas, fresh ideas. I include fashion in there. I mean, some of the best young fashion designers, fashion ideas across the big global brands are coming from Africa. So it's just a case of us harnessing. I mean, we're focusing on one really small, specific part of the entertainment industry, which is music, or the arts industry, should I say. And the arts is as broad as you know, food, fashion, photography, visual art, fine art, theatre, film. There's so much talent coming out of Africa within all of these art forms. Our small little corner of it, the music industry, is obviously the one that we're focused on, because we're all within the music industry. But I think the overlap for me is exciting as well, because there's a potential for us here in South Africa and across the continent, like I said, to harness all this talent and make it commercially viable, not just on the continent, but to export as well, because that's where we want to be. We want to take African music global. It already is there, but it's got to translate into proper touring circuit, however we define that, regionally, or by small sort of like-minded people working together, whether it be in East Africa and West Africa. I mean, there's the challenge that we mentioned earlier of transport and travel. It's not that easy to travel around Africa as it is in other parts of the world. Like, for example, you can't fly directly from Lagos to Johannesburg anymore. But in order to cover what is a flight, you now would need to fly from West Africa, Lagos, to East Africa, either Nairobi or Addis Ababa on one of the big African carriers, and then fly south to South Africa. So these are the challenges, basic challenges that are out there. But the main point for inspiration and encouragement is that we're all excited to do this thing and to build it as ACA. We've managed to make some progress, and we hope to continue building this and attracting like-minded individuals to the organization, and getting new ideas and fresh ideas in, and slowly but surely chipping away at those bigger challenges, which would require us getting the ear of people in government or in cultural institutions to help us build the circuit.
Okay, well, so thank you very much. It's been a very illuminating interview with Josh Georgiou. I hope I pronounced that well. Oh, thanks. And Dan Chiorboli, right? Yeah, sorry for that. Okay, so Josh Georgiou is an experienced entrepreneur in the music industry, with a 30-year trailblazing career working for Sony Music, and then managing artists as an international AR and marketing manager. He is on the board of directors of the Hugh Masekela Foundation and also the ACA. So, Josh, it was nice to meet you and to talk with you. I've also been with Dan Chiorboli. He has performed and collaborated with musicians from all over the world, and on over 200 albums. And then he is the originator and the driving force behind the Liberation Project and the Solidarity Express, the festival director for WOMAD in South Africa, and serves as global ambassador for Project Rhino. Also, my name is Adebayo Adegbite. I'm a content strategist at crowd.com, and we talk. We have.
Joshua, you're still there?
Yeah,
I'm here. I think Bayo's frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we talk. So this is the first of a series with. So we're going to be having series like this across the other regions. So we're going to be doing East Africa next, then North Africa, then so that we get a perspective from all the regions in Africa. So once again, Josh and Dan, it's been a very, very interesting experience, I must confess. As I said, I know less of these things than you guys do, but you guys have really, really made some very important points, and I appreciate that. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you do have the pleasant rest of your day. So of course, I'll be hoping we can have more conversations about this. It's been really fun beyond the interview thing, talking with you guys. And you guys were really, really fun, very, very wonderful to talk with. So thank you very much. See you around.
Thank you, and looking forward to coming back and hearing what our colleagues and contemporaries in East Africa and West Africa and North Africa, how they answer these same questions and how they are approaching this touring circuit within those regions. And I think between the four corners, we can regroup, at the end of those interviews and look through the various views that have been raised and see where there's some commonality and see where there's some differences and hopefully some new ideas that we can exchange with each other. So thanks, Adebayo, for putting this together, and please keep us posted on how the other interviews go.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Have a good
Likewise.
evening.
Thanks, Adebayo.
Yeah.
All the best. Yeah. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah.